everybody.
Hello.
I feel like I could just stay worshipping for hours. And I was thinking about that whole thing about the ground on which we stand is holy ground, or something like that. And I was just thinking that then. Okay, so we at the moment in Lovebristol are
in the 1960s.
Yeah, there is an explanation. So we are doing a series on prayer at the moment. Bob Scott Cook, who is a spiritual kind of leader in Bristol.
Legend.
Yeah, a spiritual legend. He came a few weeks ago and it re-envisioned us in prayer. So we are now doing a series on prayer. Joy opened this series last week and did an amazing job at doing like a kind of whistle-stop tour of everything prayer. So if you didn't get a chance to see her talk, you can see it online. It's really good, and it will, it's just an inspirational thing to go see again. So today I'm talking on intercessory prayer. I was just thinking, when the word intercessor comes up, can you just shout out what you think? Anyone?
Stand in the gap.
Anything else?
Appeal on behalf of.
Huh?
Appeal on behalf of.
That's good to say passionate.
Passionate. Okay.
Bit hard work.
Yeah, kind of. So when I told one of my housemates, it's not my housemate that's here today, don't worry, that I was doing it, she was like, "Oh, intercession, very dull, very heavy." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to make all of I'm going to make all of the slides really wacky. So if you start falling asleep, then hopefully just look at the slideshow and it will wake you up." But no, I want to kind of inspire us today by thinking, talking about some people that we may or may not know who are amazing intercessors, and just to really encourage us and inspire us. Is everybody here a Christian?
It's a bit personal, isn't it?
I'm kind of assuming everyone is. I was going to say I'm starting with a lot of assumptions here. I was like, but maybe the better thing to say, if you're not a Christian or you're exploring, you can come and talk to us afterwards, because this might be a bit, we're not introducing Christianity here. This is something that's like, when you're a Christian, this is something that you can go into. So I'm kind of assuming that people kind of know what intercession is a bit. Have I said everything I want to say about that? Yeah, I'm not the most qualified person to talk about intercession, because as Joy was saying last week, I don't really feel like my prayer life is everything that I wish it could be, but hopefully I'll inspire myself and everyone else to be more into intercession. Okay, so slide 2. That was my garbled introduction. I always like to throw an etymology in there, because it's nice to see where the word comes from. And intercessor comes from Latin intercedo. I don't know if anyone speaks Latin. Intercedo, which is inter, between, and cedo, I go. So I go between, which is what you said.
And
Nick. Yeah, so that's basically what intercession is. We go between God and a person, a group of people, an issue, anything really. We go between, we stand between. And I kind of, when I first became Christian 5 or 6 years ago, the first introduction I had to intercession, I guess, was when my sister told me that they'd been praying so much for me to become a Christian, and that one day they were in a group, and my sister basically pretended to be me. So they all put their hands on her, pretending that she was me in a way. So she was almost like a surrogate, so that they were kind of praying on. She was kind of standing in as me. And I remember being a bit like, ooh, freaky, but it worked. And it's just quite an interesting example of a group of people praying for someone else, them not being there and standing in. So that was really cool. I went and spoke to some students recently at the Christian Union in Bristol University, and this guy came up to me afterwards asking about my journey into Christianity. And he said, how much do you think it was other people praying for you, like my parents and my family and my grandparents and their community, and how much was just you finding your way there? And I was like, I don't really know the answer to that. I can't really know the answer to that, how much, if it was a percentage of like, how much it was them, how much it was God, how much it was me going towards God. But, I'm assuming that a lot of the prayer that was aimed for me had something to do with me then becoming a Christian.
Yes.
And
Well done.
and what's hilarious is I actually remember when I wasn't a Christian saying to my family, don't you dare pray for me at the home group. Praying about me, talking about me as I don't want anything, and they obviously ignored me. So that is kind of what intercession is, going between. And Joy spoke about different types of prayer last week, and intercessory prayer is, I feel like a lot of the prayer that we do is kind of intercessory prayer because we are just praying for people all the time. So we might realise that we're intercessing a lot more than we think we are. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is the verse that we're looking at today. Nick, do you want to read it out?
Devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful, and pray for us too, that God may open a door for our message. Pray that I may proclaim it clearly.
Okay, I've also got some other verses here, which are Romans 8:34. Jesus says that he's at the right hand of God and is interceding for us. In 1 John 2, we read that Jesus is our advocate with the Father. And Hebrews 7:25, we learn that Jesus always lives to intercede for us. Also, Ephesians 6:18, with all prayer and petition, pray at all times in the Spirit, and with this in view, be on the alert with all perseverance and petition for all the saints. And 1 Timothy 2 verses 1, first of all then, I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgiving be made on behalf of all men. A couple more. Matthew 5:44, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And the last one, Jeremiah 29:7, seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will have welfare. So there's loads of examples there of basically intercessory prayer. And there's different things there. There's praying for the saints, which I think is more of a Catholic tradition. I think that is a thing in Catholicism, that they pray to the saints. Thanksgiving, praying for our enemies, our persecutors, bullies, on behalf of cities. So praying on behalf of people groups or places, like Abraham pleaded on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah. He kind of went to God and petitioned, saying, if there's a certain number of people here who are righteous, please spare it. So he really interceded in that moment. I think that's right. Is that right? I didn't actually look that one up. I'm pretty sure from my memory that's right.
Well done.
So obviously there's just so many examples in the Bible telling us to intercede and to go between, to stand in. So can you go to the next slide, please? I made this online, and these are just some things here of different kind of things that we can intercede for. So desires, dreams, difficulties, practical help, illness, comforts, giving, clarity of mind, friendships, mental health issues, professionally. Like Ed was just sharing earlier, those group of people were praying to intercede to establish this thing in the prison, and I'm sure that will continue, all of those prayers. So we can literally pray and intercede for anything. So just have a look at that and be inspired. And remember the funky wallpaper. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so I was thinking about the slide from Colossians, which is devote yourselves to intercessory prayer, and I just think that this is an invitation for us as a group of believers to devotion. It's a devotional thing, and if you think about the word devotion, sometimes maybe it can be seen as like a bit of a over the top thing, but really it's like it's a practice, isn't it? Like being devoted to someone or something is normally like a steadfast, persevering, you commit to it for a long time. And that is, I think, that's what kind of intercession is inviting us into. So I've got a few examples of, and Nick's also got an example, of people who have interceded and who've made intercession a big part of their lives. And they're really inspiring people who we can draw inspiration from, and just the way that they live. And yeah, so one of them is a guy called, no, I'm not. Well, I was going to bring up Rob Scott Cook, because he actually brought up, he kind of told a story a few weeks ago about him interceding on behalf of one of his brothers. And he was praying, I think he'd been praying for him for like over 30, I don't know how long it was, like 30 years. And, he just carried on going. And he said that if he'd known at the beginning that it would be 30 years before any change would happen, probably, that would have been a big commitment that he would be aware of. He didn't know that, but his prayers he kept praying absolutely steadfastly. And then had an amazing moment recently, I think. A few years ago, yeah. Where his brother, he woke up in the night with his brother really on his mind and decided just to pray and intercede for him in that moment. And it turns out that his brother, at that same moment, over in Wales, wherever he was, had kind of woken up and really felt this strong urge to kind of explore God or kind of turn to God. And then that led to an opening where Rob was able to go and visit his brother and work through kind of like alpha, I guess, like a miniature alpha type thing. He just led him through and he decided to give his life to the Lord. So it was just like a really cool example. Again, go and see the talk if you haven't, because he says it in obviously perfect detail in the talk. Just to inspire us that even though it can take a long time or be instant, that it's worth it. Interceding is worth it. And it's like a chance for us to go deeper. So there's also another guy called Rees Howells. Has anyone heard of Rees Howells?
Yeah.
I didn't know about him, but Caleb told me about him. And Caleb's dad read the book called Intercession, which is by someone else, but it's about Rees Howells. And he lived quite a radical life of intercession. And his son, he's dead now, but his son said this: the intercessor becomes responsible for the answer of that prayer. You can engage in prayer and not be responsible for the answer. The true intercessor will resume responsibility for the prayer you're offering. So really, it's kind of asking us to take a bit more responsibility, and even though we've got the fun backgrounds, to be a bit more serious about what we're praying for. And I know that looking at my own life, quite a lot of the prayers that I pray on a weekly basis or daily basis can be a bit by rote, and when we're praying on Fridays at the meeting or praying for little things here and there, I might just kind of pray them and not be really kind of taking it as seriously or going as deep as it could be. And with the intercession, we're just being called to devote ourselves to prayer. And yeah, I've got some, actually, sorry, let me go back. Yeah, I was going to talk also about Abby. So when I first joined Lovebristol, Abby was one of the leaders for the Release Academy, and she's an amazing intercessor. So she was my mentor for a while, and I would kind of go on walks with her around Blaise Castle, and she would just be this amazing intercessor. So we'd walk for like an hour, and she would just pray continuously. And then we'd go back to our house, and she'd sit down at the table, and she wouldn't stop praying until something shifted. And I was just this brand new Christian watching this all unfold, like, what's she doing? And I actually messaged her, but she saw the message and didn't get back to me. But I was like, could you tell?
Too busy interceding.
Yeah. Blue tip.
Did you intercede for her to
I should have. But I was asking her what this group's called, because she's part of this amazing group which is an international group of intercessors. Some of you might know what this is called, but I don't. And she didn't tell me, so I don't know. But I wanted to show the video, because she showed me a video of them, and they meet once a year, like in America or somewhere, at like a big conference, all of them. And when they come together, they're all sat in this massive auditorium, like hundreds of them, and there's a person up on the stage kind of hosting and going through it, and they'll bring up a prayer point, and they're normally around the persecuted church or war and big stuff, and they'll say, like, this is now what we're going after, and then the whole auditorium will start praying, and they just pray and pray and pray and pray, until eventually, at some random point, the whole place will just go quiet, and they'll all feel collectively, with the presence of the Spirit in the room, just to stop. And they normally know that actually something has shifted in that moment, and then they stop praying and they wait for, they then just wait for like a text or some sort of news from whoever it is to be like, this is now what's changed. And the one that I watched was that they were praying for a group of Christians who were on mission, who were in a war zone, and this rebel group was going in and just going to sweep through and just completely overrun where they were all living with their children. And they all started praying, and this whole thing took place, and then they all stopped. And then 40 minutes later, someone just ran up on stage with a text just to say they've, the rebel group, instead of taking the course of action that they were going to take, have just branched off on a different random place. So they've completely avoided the mission base. And it was just like, that is just the kind of, that's like the battles that we're kind of talking about. Like, we're talking about small things just between us, but we're also talking about, bigger things. We're powerful. Like, living with Greg and Claire for 4 years, like, that was the mantra of the mantra of living at Free Corner, is that you are a powerful person. And that is like, yeah, that is kind of what we're saying here. Like, we can devote ourselves, and we're powerful because of the Spirit in us. And just to kind of really think about that and meditate on that, and build up faith in ourselves to really be like those people in that group. Everyone following?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just quickly go through, make sure I'm on course. Yeah. So, sorry, 1 second. Yeah. It's a bit about identity as well. So, really kind of believing what we carry and who we are really enable us to kind of really go into this. And I did read Benny Johnson's book, The Happy Intercessor, 4 or 5 years ago, and I really loved the bit that stands out to me more than anything in that book is that she kind of said that she was more of a background person, more timid, a bit shy, and then one night she was at kind of a worship thing and just felt the Spirit of the Lord on her, and then she just basically roared for like a long period of time, like a lion, growling and roaring, and everyone was just like, what is going on with Benny at the back of the room? And she just kind of like shook off this kind of timidness of her, and just became, in that moment of roaring and growling like a lion, she just kind of took on this new personality of power and of being this strong, amazing woman of God who was so into intercession. And that was really where she was called. Sadly, she's died now, but it's just a cool book, so it is in the reading list. I'll tell you about it later. And I just thought, really in that moment, she was aware of her identity in God, and that is kind of a part, I think, of being intercessors. We really have to know and have faith in who we are. Okay. So yes, if you go on to the next one. Okay. So I was thinking about some prompts. We might be asking ourselves, so who should we intercede for? Where do we begin? And these are some prompts that I came up with. So it might be that someone literally comes up and asks you to pray for them, which can happen quite a lot, or on prayer groups, that someone might just say, please pray for me, please pray for this situation. That's a prompt for us to be like, okay, this is an opportunity to intercede. Another one is being woken up in the night with someone or something really on your mind or heart, seems to be quite a lot of intercession things I've heard of, that this is actually the case, that people will just kind of get woken up early in the morning or at some point in the night, really thinking about someone that they might not normally think of, or someone they know really well, but that might happen, and that in that moment, instead of going back to sleep, maybe just stop and think, oh, this might be an opportunity to do some intercession, and just really, really pray for that situation or person. Travail, so when something makes your spirit groan, like at war, injustice, abuse. St. Paul, he talks about travail in the Bible, about him kind of like really, his spirit being in labour pains was for the early Christians really, and that he just went into this very deep place of intercession. And I haven't had loads of intercession experience, but I have had a few experiences of what Abby said was probably travail. And that was like one time when I was in South Africa, we were all just praying, and I felt this sudden, really strong emotion over the like, kind of like the casual sex dating app thing in England and America and places like that, where it's just really like there's just not any stability, and it's just like constant one night stands with people. And I really felt in that moment like this really strong kind of sadness about it, that people were finding it difficult. I just felt God's heart about that in that moment, and I just started it really felt like my spirit just opened up, and I was crying out to God. It felt, I haven't had children, but it felt like some sort of labour thing, and all of the people left, and they just left me in there with a couple of people, and we're just praying, and it took about 40 minutes. And so it was like this deep kind of, it was exhausting actually, it felt really tiring, but again with like the Israel-Gaza situation, you know, seeing some videos of stuff that's taking place there, my spirit just felt like, Lord, you know, like I was really, like my heart really open, and I was like really kind of trying to intercede on behalf of what's going on in humanity. And maybe other people here have had experiences like that, and it does seem to be quite random, so I don't know if it just comes about of its own, but it's when you just, I guess when your heart really connects to something that's on God's heart, to really kind of go into that moment and not be afraid of it. So another one, new people coming into your life who are in a bad place. This could be, you know, new colleagues, new family members, new babies, new all sorts of people coming into our lives, just people that we meet on the street. They're like, you know, we can choose to intercede on behalf of those people. Another one is a little bit like this. If you keep thinking of someone or something repeatedly, like if you're just going through your week and just this person just keeps coming to your mind, like that's a prompt for intercession. Got family members who have no faith or in a difficult place, quite obvious. The sick and the dying in life, that we are really called to like care and pray for the sick. And another one, disturbing news headlines, like that's, yeah, so hopefully like those, if you're thinking like where can I intercede in my life, there's quite a lot there, you know. So yeah, if you go on to the next slide. Right, so Reese Howes, I mentioned him already. The way that he was interceding was a little bit like Abby and the group that she's in, so this whole thing of like really building your faith. And he was quite a radical guy, Welsh guy, and they're just going to show like a 6-minute clip from a little video thing from this American woman about it's about so the person she's interviewing is this sweet lady called Ruth Williams, who was actually in one of the intercessory groups with Reese Howes, and they were praying during the Second World War. So she just talks a bit about what those intercessory groups were like, and it's just quite inspiring. So sit back because it's like a 6-minute video.
Who worked closely with Reese Howes and who participated in the college in Wales. I began by asking Ruth Williams to describe what it was like to share in a prayer meeting with Reese Howes.
Read the word, maybe if it's not, and then it's read it, or it was read on it, and then you return to the especially during the war, when we would go through one meeting and we'd think, oh, how hard it is, and we'd come back to the second meeting in the blue room, and Mr. Howard would again read the word, and we would feel we were coming stronger in believing God, and then suddenly he would say, we are through, and we would know in the spirit that God had heard our prayers. But it was a real experience to be here, because he taught us how to pray and how to believe God. The way God moved in those prayers was absolutely outstanding, for no reason at all. The Germans would just stop fighting and we'd advance. But I feel that Mr. Howes taught us so much on believing God. That was the thing.
Now, what's so interesting to me by that comment was he knew the difference of when he was praying in faith and when he was not.
Yes, he knew when he was not really believing. He had the expression of climbing up in faith. And we were conscious of it with him, you know. We would feel it. We would feel him climbing in faith.
How did he, as a leader, lead a prayer meeting? Did he dominate it, or did he
Oh no.
leave it out to others to participate?
Oh no, as soon as he had finished speaking, we'd get down on our knees and everyone was free to pray. I think perhaps the outstanding time I remember was when they were in Dunkirk, and it seemed so impossible for them to visit us. And then Uncle Tommy, wasn't it? We had a person here, we knew Uncle Tommy, and he prayed, and you know, you knew that he had touched the Lord that time. And of course, it was amazing what happened in Dunkirk, that the seas were so calm, and that Hitler never allowed his troops to advance as they wanted to. And that all those men escaped. It was amazing, it really was. But God had his purpose, didn't he? He had said that Christian England wouldn't be invaded, and he was proving it to us. He would say, well, God has spoken to me, and God has said, for example, Hitler will not invade Christian England. Or again, when God has said Hitler is to attack Russia, an impossible thing, because they'd made a pact that they were going to be together. And in that way, he would prophesy.
How did you see enacted out in his life that verse in James about the prayer of a fervent righteous man availeth much?
Oh, that was very obvious. Yes, it was, you know. Not only in the war, but in individuals here, you know. He would pray for people who were sick, and his prayers were answered, you know. It was amazing.
What would you say most characterized his prayers? Was it fervency, prevailing, taking hold of God, or all of these things?
Well, more probably all three. Yes, all three. Because you really felt him prevailing at times, you know. And you knew it affected him too. It had an effect on his body, his prevailing prayer.
Tell us about the all-night prayer meetings.
Oh, well, when we would go on to about 2 o'clock in the morning, well, we'd have a meeting at 7, and it would go on until about 9, and we'd come home back into the college, and we'd have supper. Then about 10 o'clock we would go into the blue room, and we would go on then until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning if the battle was difficult. You know, it all depended on how the enemy was advancing. If he was advancing, then we kept in prayer, because he told us we were to battle.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll cut it short. It's obviously meant to be cut short a bit. Okay, so, sweet little lady. And I know it's obviously a long time ago, but really liked this thing that she said, that he said, climbing up in faith. Go to the next slide. Sean, it matches your jumper. So, yeah, hopefully really inspiring. I mean, I haven't actually read the book Intercession, but apparently Mark Wadey said he read it and it really
Oh my gosh.
shook him.
He was depressed for like a week.
Because it's like,
He's a rubbish Christian.
he felt like he was a rubbish Christian.
But
But
good depressed.
yeah. But it's just like, I watched that whole video, and even though the whole kind of, the rest of it was a bit funny, it was quite inspiring. Just to think about how we can climb up in faith. And she said, you know, they would spend a long time getting to a point where they were just so full of faith, really believing in God, really believing everything that they believe. And I think sometimes we have to actually just spend a little bit of time focusing what it is that we believe. What I really like sometimes is like if we're singing a song, Claire, you might sometimes just stop us and be like, let's actually just think about the words that we're actually singing right now, because it's actually reminds us how powerful these things are that we believe. So there's an invitation here today just to really focus on actually how mad and powerful the thing that we've devoted our lives to, and say that we believe how powerful it is, and just to be really kind of filled with joy and excitement about the possibilities that God can do just using even one of us. So I hope that you can feel inspired, that the Spirit in you can do great things. And that's why in the Bible it does say that we are now God's hands and feet, and not just practically, you know, like looking at the war in Israel and Gaza, I'm like, I feel so powerless practically to do anything to change the situation. All I can really do, that I feel I can do, is to pray and to intercede on behalf of the situation. So yeah, I was going to say a little bit about the story I said earlier about the tongues thing that I sometimes happens, because I actually I believe that it is this kind of spiritual voice, spiritual language that I get given. So I believe that when I type it in, it's going to come up with something that is spiritual, and that is like, it builds up my faith. I'm climbing up in faith with this, like, and I just, yeah, it's an invitation to us really to walk daily with God. Go on, next one. So here's just some of the books that I mentioned, these two books. I didn't mention How to Pray, but I haven't actually read this, but apparently it's really good. So got that on good authority. So that's a good book to read. So you know, if today anything that has been mentioned like makes you think, actually I'd like to read more or learn more about intercession and really go into this, then these are some quite good resources. I don't know if anyone else in the room has got any.
Intercessory Prayer by Dutch Sheets.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
Prayer by Philip Yancey is really good.
There you go.
Oh yeah, that is really
Yeah. So you know, have a read if you're interested. And I was kind of thinking, you know, coming into land really, like, let's flex our intercessory muscles as a group of believers, as a church, as a family. And Shan, you've got
Just add
something?
in something.
Yeah.
I just came back from Egypt, and we have a prayer for Egypt across March, and it's actually in Bristol on Zoom group. So if anyone wants to join in on Fridays at 8 o'clock, just let me know. We just have an hour prayer, and then at the end of March, if anyone who wants to come to Egypt for the last week of March, going there to pray. And if you read Isaiah 19, it talks about an altar being in the heart of Egypt and joining Assyria, which is like Middle East, to Israel, and a highway, and how God will bring them together. So I just feel like it's a really kind of important time in world history to pray there. So if anyone does want to come on that trip,
Great.
to see.
Intercession is exciting. There's travel involved. I actually remember, Shan, after we were talking, that one time me and Gwyneth, and we came and led worship at, years ago at one of your prayer gatherings.
Yeah.
And I was quite stunned by how long it went on for. Because it was just, I thought it was just one A4 page and the prayer points on there, and it went on and on and on and on. It was page after page, country after country after country. And I was just like, whoa, wow, these people are dedicated to interceding for so many different projects in so many different countries. And I was like, fair play, it was inspiring, you know. So yeah, I was just thinking kind of on behalf, like, where we can go with this, is that, you know, I don't know if you did come to Rob's talk, but he did the folded piece of paper 4 times, that you have one name on one piece, you flip it over, 7 names, one day of the week, and then on the next one, 30 names. So that's basically that you're praying for 3 people a day, and the first person you pray for every day, second just once a week, and the third is just once a month. So that's quite a cool thing to do. You know, you can look back at the video and see how it's actually done. So that's something that we could do, like that's interceding for people in our lives. We could also just start by just choosing one person or one thing to intercede on behalf of. Like it could be it literally could be joining that group that Shan's just mentioned. But it's a bit of a challenge for us to just be like, okay, I'm gonna go into this and really kind of commit and devote myself to interceding for one person and take responsibility for that prayer, and really believe and climb up in faith, believing that you know there will be a resolution in that prayer.
The prayer walk as well is the example.
Yeah, prayer walk.
A very obvious example.
Yeah. Actually, Nick, did you want to share the story about the fog?
It's up to you. I can do.
Yeah, it's inspiring.
Okay. So in the 19th century, there was a man called. Obviously, they don't want me to share. In the 19th century, there was a man called George Muller. Have people heard of him?
Yes.
He's quite close to our hearts in Lovebristol, and we're doing a lot of interceding and prayer regarding, but that's a different story. But anyway, this is a little story from a captain of a ship, and he would have called himself a Christian at the time, but an ordinary Christian. He considered himself an ordinary Christian, and he said, we had a man on board, George Muller of Bristol, and I had been on the bridge for 22 hours and never left it. And was startled by a man tapping me on the shoulder. It was George Muller. Captain, he said, I have come to tell you that I must be in Quebec on Saturday afternoon. This was Wednesday. It's impossible, I said. Very well, if your ship can't take me, God will find me other means of locomotion to take me, for I've never broken engagement in 57 years. And it was impossible because of the fog. I would willingly help you, but how can I? I am helpless, said the captain. Let's go down into the chart room and pray. I looked at the man of God and thought to myself, what a lunatic asylum could this man have come from? I've never heard of such a thing. Mr. Muller, do you know how dense the fog is? No, he replied. My eyes are not on the density of the fog, but on the living God who controls every circumstance of my life. And this is a man who built orphanages and never asked for a penny. He prayed and interceded for the money to come in to build orphanages. He also prayed for the orphans, but that was another story. Anyway, he got down to the knees and prayed one of the most simple prayers. I muttered to myself, that would suit a children's class where the children were no more than 8 or 9 years old. The burden of his prayer was something like this. O Lord, if it is consistent with thy will, please remove the fog in 5 minutes. You know the engagement you made for me in Quebec Saturday. I believe it is your will. When he finished, I was going to pray myself, but he put his hand on my shoulder and told me not to pray. He said, First, you don't believe he will. And second, I believe that he has. And so there was no need to pray anymore about it. I looked at him and George Muller said, "Captain, I know my Lord for 47 years and he's never been a single day that I've failed to gain an audience with the King. Get up, Captain, and open the door, you'll find the fog is gone." I got up and the fog was gone. I tell you, some people of scientific turn of mind will say that is not according to natural laws. No, it's according to spiritual laws. The God who we have to do with is omnipotent. Hold on to God's omnipotence, and believingly, on Saturday afternoon, I may add, George Muller was there on time. Amen. But the simplicity of knowing that we're seated in heavenly places and simply asking for God's will. But anyway, that was the prayer.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, that's
I'd just like to finish by praying for everyone. Okay. Jesus, thank you that you that your spirit dwells within us, and there's power. We have power, your power in us to intercede. Thank you for the honour that you've given us of being able to do this and to stand, to go between on behalf of the people and other things. And I just pray that as this series continues of prayer, that just during the week that we'll just be really inspired, all of us, with our prayer partners, with the things we hear on the Sundays, with other things that we encounter, that we'll just we'll have a hunger and a thirst for prayer like we've never had before, God. We'll see you move through this community, through these streets, through the people we're connected to, in a way that we've never seen before, and it will excite us, God, and fill us with joy. It will feel, we'll be able to worship you so freely and full of truth and love and excitement, just seeing these amazing things around us happening, Lord, just like the fog lifting. I just really pray that you'd inspire us all with just even one thing this week that we can really dedicate ourselves to and take responsibility for, and stand between and say, yes, this is the prayer that I'm praying, and I will hold fast to that until I see change, and just dispel any doubts that we have, Lord, and really help us to climb up in our faith and believe everything that we believe fully. So be with everyone now, God, and thank you so much. Amen.